I want to talk a little bit about how we heal our relationships. And there's two core principles that are totally essential in both healing ourselves and in our relationships. And the first is presence. So learning to work on being centered in our hearts and away from this mind that is full of reactivity and full of our conditioned patterns. And when you're more centered, that's going to give you the wisdom to work on all the other aspects that I'll mention in a moment. And the second overriding principle is non-judgment, or you could call that unconditional love. And in fact, the more we work on presence, the more we are able to be unconditionally loving of both ourselves and of those around us. The other thing about non-judgment is that, in fact, it heals us. The more we learn to recognize that no one is worthy of our judgment, then we will also be learning to recognize that we are not worthy of judgment either, that we are also being held in unconditional love. So there are probably 4 essential elements to how we heal our relationship. The first would be learning to acknowledge and accept our emotions. So many humans on the planet walk around not really knowing what they're feeling. And the truth is, while we don't acknowledge our emotions, they will control us. They'll either be projected internally and make us sick, either depressed, anxious, or physically unwell, or we'll project them outwardly and possibly hurt those around us. The second essential element is knowing what our conditioned patterns and thoughts are. And these are very much informed by our emotion. So for instance, a common example of a conditioned pattern is when we have, so the emotion behind it would be fear of not being enough, fear of being rejected, fear of being abandoned. And the pattern that we create from that might be, and there could be many, but it might be keeping people at a distance all the time, or it might be that if our partner comes home late from work, we get irrationally emotional. Or it might be that we just keep up defensive walls and never really open and never really deeply connect, and therefore feel very lonely. And we have many of these patterns. You know, we might people please, we might stay withdrawn, we might avoid doing things because we're scared of them. So it's so essential in our relationships that we see these patterns and the emotions that exist underneath them. The third thing is that we learn to see and deeply understand other humans. You could call that deep empathy. So not only do we need to see our own deep emotions and our own patterns, but we need to be able to see that in other people. Just take, for example, I see many young people with social anxiety, and often they've had parents who say to them, you know, why can't you just get out there? What's wrong with you? You know, why are you always at home? And of course that makes the child feel unworthy, not good enough. They doubt themselves, why can't I do this? Whereas if that parent could recognize that they're scared, that they don't feel confident, that they're scared they're not enough. So you can then say to the child, okay, I totally see that you're scared. I know that you find it uncomfortable and difficult. But how about we just take small steps, things that you can manage, and we just work on it little bit by little bit. And the difference between those two things is immense. The child feels understood, they find a way forward. So if we learn to have deep empathy in our relationships, it really helps to facilitate a much deeper, more loving connection. And the final thing that's really important is authenticity. So we need to be able to be centered in our inner truth and able to honour that. So very often in life we do have to deal with humans who might be difficult. Perhaps they are caught in blame or victimhood, or perhaps they're highly critical or very controlling. And it's never going to be about judging that human, because all of us have some of those patterns, even if it's in a very small degree. So it's never about judgment, but we certainly need to be able to not enable those behaviours, and to be able to not be entangled in them ourselves, so that we can live our lives freely. So all those four things, and then the overriding principles of non-judgment or unconditional love and absolute presence. So these are the things that will guide us in our relationships. I'm going to be giving a free workshop on healing relationships on Wednesday the 16th at 7 o'clock. So I would love you to join me. I think you'll find it really helpful.